everyone, it's Alice, and we have finally made it to the end of my bookshelf tour. I'm pretty sure this is the final episode, and today we're kind of just looking at everything we haven't looked at yet. So we have some nonfiction, short stories, poetry, I think. Yeah, I think that's it. We're gonna start over here with my short stories, and I have a little over half a shelf of these. I feel like short stories, whether or not I'm like into them, sort of comes and goes a little bit, but I do have a nice little collection of like stuff I've read and loved and things that are on my TBR. In this stack here, we have this book, which I haven't read, but it's beautiful. I think I kind of got this because it was beautiful, to be honest. And then we have this, which I have read. This is the Virago Book of Witches, and if you like witch stories, this is perfect. A Manual for How to Love Us, I have not read, but it's been recommended to me. Mystery Lights, I haven't read, but to be honest, I kind of got it because of the cover. I do find it difficult to find like the right short stories for me, so very often I sort of just go in blind. Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century, I have been recommended. Him, Me, Muhammad Ali, I've read, really liked it. Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata, liked it but didn't love it, but some of the stories in here are like super disturbing. Salt Slow by Julie Armfield, I really like, and then The Beginning of the World in the Middle of the Night, I've also read and really liked. This tiny book in here is Weasels in the Attic, which I just put here because this is short enough to be one short story, I feel, but this cover is very cute. A Portable Shelter is also a really beautiful book. I read this quite some time ago and I really liked it. Things We Say in the Dark by Kirsty Logan, I haven't read, but I really want to. The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter, I have read and I really liked it. We have some short stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which I haven't read, but I do really like Fitzgerald, so I'm excited to read that. Then we have these two anthologies, which are both beautiful. The Haunting Season and The Winter Spirits. I've read The Haunting Season, but I haven't read this one yet, but I really like these. I like the authors that are writing stories in them, so that's fun. And there is a new one. I don't know if it's out or if it's coming out, but there is one that is kind of like witchy in this kind of series of books, which I really want to get. What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky. I really, really like this one, so I definitely recommend it. It's a little weird, but I really liked it. Kitchen Curse by Eke Kurniawan, I got just because I like this author. Asleep by Banana Yoshimoto. I don't know if this actually belongs here in short stories, but I do really like this author. And then we have this one, which I haven't read, but I kind of got because of the cover. This, which also has a really good cover. And then lastly, we have She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark, which I got because I read Boy Parts by this author, and I really liked it. If you have any recommendations for short stories based on the ones that I have read and loved from this, and you're like thinking of a short story collection that you think I would like, let me know, because like I said, I do have a hard time finding ones that I really love, but when I do, I love it. Moving on to my poetry books. These are all of my poetry books, although there is a nonfiction book up here that couldn't fit anywhere else that I read this year and I really liked. I'm not going to pull out all of these because, to be honest, the ones that I haven't read, I don't really have anything to say about, but I can pull out my favorites out of these ones and show you those. So I've picked out these ones. These are like poetry collections that I return to all the time and I read in quite often, actually, and I would say that this is probably my favorite poetry of all time. Undying by Michelle Faber is one of my absolute favorite collections. It's a collection of poetry that Faber wrote to and about his wife, and it is heart-wrenching. So if I ever need to cry for whatever reason, this is what I read. What We Buried by Caitlin Seal. I just remember the feeling of reading this collection. It's kind of hard to like summarize, but it's excellent. 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair by Pablo Neruda. It's quite famous, so I probably don't need to explain that. Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth is an excellent collection of poetry about womanhood and mothers and daughters, and it has one of my favorite poems in it, actually. It's this one. It's very short, but it says, "In love and in war, to my daughters I will say, when the men come, Set Yourself on Fire. I love that one. It's so good. Another one that I probably don't need to explain is Grief is a Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. I also do actually really like Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. There's a lot of poetry in here that I really enjoy, and I like the format of this and the drawings and everything. Lastly, we have this classic. This is a collection of what has survived from the poet Sappho, and this is just beautiful. And even though things only survive in fragments, it's still excellent. The two bottom shelves here are most of my nonfiction books, and this is like a mishmash of all kinds of different things because I like reading about all kinds of things, so yeah, there's a lot of different stuff here. Starting over here, we have a book about lady poisoners of history, which I've read and I really liked. We have this, which is a really cool book about maps and maps of places that never existed. And I have read this one and I thought it was very interesting. And it has a lot of like illustrations and pictures, and it's just a really cool book, although I realize this area of interest is probably a little niche. I have a book about art, which I haven't read yet, but I really want to. We have a book here about archaeology, which I've read and I thought was very interesting. We Are the Weather is a book that I've had for a really long time, but I haven't read. It's like a climate change book. This is a book about animals and the world, and I just thought it looked interesting. Agent Sonia by Ben McIntyre is a history book. It's a biography, which I thought was really interesting. You can really see that my area of interests are sort of all over the place with these books because there's so many different things. But we also have some true crime. We have The Fact of a Body, which I thought was really interesting. Brutal, but really interesting. I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is another true crime book. I have a book in Norwegian about the Second World War and like the Nazi elite in Norway, which I haven't read, but I'm very interested in this, so I think it will be interesting to learn. I also have this, which is a book about classic penguin covers. And obviously, as someone who loves covers, this is a really cool book to have. And you get to like explore different designs and the ideas behind them. I do actually have this book, for instance. And I really like the way that they've designed this whole book. It's excellent. Here we have another book about the Second World War in Norwegian. I have this book, which is one of my many books about death, which is an area of interest of mine for some reason. This one is also in parts about death. It's Caitlin Doughty's memoir. On the top here, we have an essay collection. This is Wedding Toasts I'll Never Give, which I just thought looked interesting. We have In the Dream House, which I, to be honest, can't really tell if this is full-on nonfiction or like a mix of fiction and nonfiction, but I've heard that it's really good, which is why I got it. Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doughty. Another book about death, and sort of this answers questions from kids and things that they are wondering about death, which I think is really cool. The Salt Path is a memoir, which I haven't read. This is a book that I've read that I've never heard anyone talk about, A Concise Chinese-English Dictionary for Lovers. It is very, like, strange in the writing style, but I really liked it. The Lost City of Zed by David Gran. I really enjoyed. It was very exciting. 7.5 Lessons About the Brain I've read, and I thought it was really interesting. What You Are Looking At, which is a book about art and how to look at art. I haven't read, but I'm really interested in this, so I'm excited to read it. We have another book by Ben McIntyre. Actually, on this shelf, I should also have The Spy and the Traitor, which is my favorite book by McIntyre, but I've lent that to a friend, and she's had it for over a year, I think. Maybe even longer, so I should get that back, but whatever. We have Say Nothing, which is a book that everyone tells me I'm gonna love, and then we have a couple of these ones. These are by Carlo Rovelli, Reality is Not What It Seems, and 7 Brief Lessons on Physics. I really enjoy these kinds of bite-sized pieces of science and like learning about that, so I really enjoyed both of these. In this stack here, we have a book by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, which I really liked. We have 84 Charing Cross Road, which I really recommend if you like books. This is the perfect bookish book. We have this, which is actually one of my favorite nonfiction books. It's a book about birds. And I say this every time I like talk about a bird book, but the older I get, the more I'm interested in birds. But this is fully illustrated, and you get to learn a little bit about each of these weird birds. I just think this is so beautifully made, and I love it. This one is a memoir, as I'm sure you know. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. This is excellent. This is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Another memoir that I really love. This one is Unnatural Causes, which is a memoir about this forensic pathologist, and it's very interesting. Again, it's sort of related to death. Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, one of the funniest memoirs that I've ever read, but it's also kind of serious, so it works really well. And then this one is actually one of my favorite nonfiction books ever. This is Over the Edge of the World by Lawrence Bergreen, and it's about Magellan's circumnavigation of the globe. And this is actually one of the first books I read as an adult that was a nonfiction book. And I was like, oh, this is what nonfiction is. I see. I think I really like this. It is also an adventure book, which is probably why I loved it so much. We have some Zora Neale Hurston, which I haven't read. Our Greenheart, which I haven't read, and then this big book in Norwegian, which is kind of hard to explain, but I think I want to read it. It was a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be, but I think it's going to be interesting. This last bottom shelf is absolutely packed, and yeah, I should really organize this, but whatever. We're just going to go through it. On the top here, we have another book about death, because again, I just think death is a very interesting topic, I guess. We have this book, which I got for some reason that I can't remember, but I still think I want to read it. We have In the Shadow of Man by Jane Goodall, which I do really want to read. I think this is going to be super interesting. The Story of More is another book about climate change that I really want to read, but I haven't read. The Invention of Nature is another book about nature, and it's kind of like history focused. Again, I really like nature and history, so this makes sense. This is Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this is actually the book that sort of got me into bite-sized books about like science and learning more about it. And I do think astrophysics is very interesting, so I feel like I learned a lot from this. Between the World and Me is a memoir that I really recommend. I thought this was an excellent read. From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty, another book about death. This is about death rituals around the world, which I thought was very, very interesting. I think about this book all the time, which probably says more about me, but I thought it was interesting. Then we have these 4 books, which are all by John Krakauer. My favorite out of these ones is Into Thin Air, which is about a climb on Mount Everest in a particular year where a lot of people died. And I've read Under the Banner of Heaven and Into the Wild, but I haven't read Eiger Dreams, so this is the only one I have left to read. Beneath that, we have all of these books. We have another book about Norway during the Second World War. We have this book, which I think looks really cool. This is about, like, witchcraft, I guess, and yeah, oddities and tales. And I just thought this looked interesting. It's sort of like a curiosity book. All the Beauty in the World is a book that I'm really looking forward to reading. This is a memoir, and it's about this museum guard at the Met, which I thought just seemed interesting. This one, though, is one of my favorite nonfiction books ever. This is The Feather Thief, which is, when you look into this book, you may think, well, that's not for me. But just trust me, this one is so exciting. And, like, you get really caught up in all of these things that you wouldn't think you'd be interested in, but it's so good. We have a book about black holes, so again, some science. We have another memoir. We have a history book, which I think is going to be really interesting. We have In the Days of Rain, which is about a girl who grew up in a cult, so this is a memoir. And then this is another one of those books where you get like bite-sized pieces of science, and this is really cool. Like if you just want some fun facts, this is perfect. Educated by Tara Westover is another book about quite a rough upbringing, I would say, so this is another memoir. Then we have this, which I haven't read, another book about death that I haven't read, another book about a ship that I haven't read. but I have read this one. This is the Anthropocene Reviewed, which I really enjoyed. The bottom shelf really is quite difficult to film, so just bear with me here. We have this little book, which is by Greta Thunberg, which I think I've read this one, I can't remember. We have Ways of Seeing by John Berger, which is another book about art that I haven't read. We have All the Violet Tiaras by Jean Menzies, which I haven't read. The Order of Time is another book from Carlo Rovelli, which I really enjoyed. I think about this book all the time, and I feel like I learned so much about time from this, and time does not work the way that I thought it did. So if you would like to read a book that will give you a headache, but you'll learn a lot from, this is perfect. The Flow is a book about rivers and water that I haven't read, but I think is going to be interesting. And then we have another book about death, but this is in Norwegian, and it's very, very good. So I don't think this has been translated to any other language, but if you are Norwegian, I would recommend this. We also have this book by Stephen Hawking, which obviously is basically a classic. And then this is a memoir, again in Norwegian. This author is of the Sami people, and I thought this was a very, very interesting story. The Sami people are the native people of Norway, and I didn't really know a lot about them, and I thought this was very educational. We have another memoir here, which you may have heard of. This is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I think maybe this is my, like, the best memoir that I've ever read. It's one of my favorite nonfiction books of all time. It is so well written, and it's harrowing, but it's so good. And I honestly kind of think everyone should read this book because it is that good. Then we have a book about gardening, which I have, even though I don't have a garden, but maybe one day. We have a book in Norwegian, which is kind of like an adventure book, another memoir. And then we have this book, which I actually really want to read. This is Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley. And I just feel like I'm gonna like this author, so I'm excited to read this. Lastly, we have this stack, and on the top here, we have this little book by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie about grief. We have The Hidden Life of Trees, which I read quite a long time ago now, and it was very interesting. So if you're interested in trees, I would really recommend this one. We also have Invisible Women, which if you would like to be angry as a woman, this is the one to read. It's very interesting though about how a lot of things are created for men and not for women, and it's very eye-opening. Then beneath that we have these nonfiction books. In the back here, by the way, are not like actual books. These are like photo books from trips and stuff that I've been on that I just couldn't fit anywhere else. But these books are like biographies, and I have actually read all of these ones by Robert K. Massey, and I really, really enjoyed them. I haven't read these ones, but I am going to someday. Alright, I guess that means we've made it to the end of this bookshelf tour. I think that was most of my books. I do have like a book tower next to my... A book tower is just a stack of books next to my bookshelf as well, of just my most recent hauls, but I didn't include them because you can just watch those hauls if you want to see those books. But I think I've covered mostly everything. I will leave a link to all of the parts somewhere where you can find them, but yeah, I think that was it. I hope you enjoyed this, and as always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!